The sun was not even being born to be born when Dosha jumped out of bed, his bare feet hitting the cold floor of the hallway. Today would be one of those magical days. Grandma's aunts would come to lunch, and that meant a house full of laughs, bubbling cookware on the stove and that smell of food that only exists when the family gathers. The 7-year-old girl loved this excitement, the chance to spy on adult conversations as she pretended to fix the table, hopefully that someone noted her new dress or brought a sweet hidden in her bag. In the kitchen, Anya was already immersed in the culinary battle, the wooden spoon dancing in the pan like a wand. Perfect cubed chopped carrots, mayonnaise in newborn jars, you have retained like soldiers everything expected your turn to shine. Mom, what do I do first? Dosha asked, while the braids still shook loose on his back. Anya smiled, pushing a rebellious strand with her wrist that insisted on sticking on her sweaty forehead. Pass the vacuator on the room rug, then peel these potatoes. But slowly, huh? Remember how I taught you, without cutting my finger. From the room, Oleg's hoarse voice cut the air like a blade, mixed with television tinnitus. From an early age he had settled in his sacred armchair, a can of sweaty beer in his hand and his eyes stuck to the match. Anya, don't forget the salpicao, huh? Aunt Nina lives talking about him, he shouted without taking his eyes off the screen. It's almost done, the wife answered, throwing a corner look at the living room, where her husband looked more like a furniture than a man. Dosha maneuvered the vacuum cleaner with the seriousness of a Formula One pilot, bypassing chairs' legs and plunging the nozzle under the couch. She loved it when her mother praised her whim, but deep down she cheered for the aunts to bring some gift, a chocolate, a new one with the hair in her hair, anything that made that day seem even more special. It was almost 11 hours when the bell sounded, abruptly like a shot. Anya wiped her hands on the flowered apron and went to open, already presenting who was on the other side. Ksenia Mikhailovna, what a surprise anytime soon, tried to disguise, but the mother-in-law was already pushing the door with the authority of those who do not ask for permission to enter. The eyes traveled the corridor with the accuracy of an inspector, as if each dust at the footer were a personal offense. I came to help, hey. Or do you think I don't need to see how things are going to my son's house? He said, as Dosha ran to hug her and he was just a distracted pat on his head, like a dog that too much. Ksenia Mikhailovna was one of those women who took up space just entering a room. In his son's kitchen, he moved like a queen in his kingdom, opening pots, turning closets, letting out sighs that were worth 1,000 words. Anya, and the potato salad with mayonnaise? Nina Arkadievna loves, he poked, as if her daughter-in-law were a huge student. Aunt Nina doesn't live without it. I'm doing it right now, said Anya, her fingers pressing the sink edge. The mother-in-law was not satisfied. She picked up the stick spoon from her daughter-in-law and stirred the salpicao with an energy that seemed to say, let me teach how to do it. Dosha watched everything from his corner, sitting on the bench with a half-potato bowl. She didn't like it when the grandma spoke like that with her mother, but she had learned early that some battles weren't yours. Better to be quiet and put more mayonnaise in salpicao, at least no one would complain. At 12:30 p.m., the aunts arrived in an avalanche of noisy kisses, colorful wrapping and exaggerated exclamations. Nina Arkadievna and Taisia Arkadievna entered as hurricanes, distributing chocolate boxes to Ksenia Mikhailovna and an expensive brand of brandy, while Anya and Dosha were greeted with a distracted head nod, as if they were part of the furniture. Ksiusha, my dear, brought your favorite sweets, announced Nina, delivering the box with a flourish. Taisia added, and this is for you, sister. Nothing like a good drink to cheer up the family. For Dosha, not even a look. But the girl didn't care. The important thing was the cheerful noise, the laughter that filled the house, the feeling that for a few hours, that place belonged to something larger than the boring daily life. Are we going to sit, people? Ordered Ksenia Mikhailovna, as if the table were his right, although technically it was Anya who had spent the whole morning preparing everything. The dishes were filling with food, and the conversations, with gossip. Between one fork and the other, the aunts told stories that only they found funny, while Ksenia Mikhailovna inserted acid comments about today's girls who don't know the value of a mother-in-law. I already told you, Ksiusha, Nina sighed, looking sideways at Anya. These modern girls have no respect. They think the world revolves around them. It's true, said Taisia, swinging her head. In the old days, The mother-in-law was like a second mother. Today, they want to live alone, to give orders. Where have you seen? Anya served the dishes in silence, the tight lips in a thin line. Dosha, unable to stand still, spoiled between the chairs, showing how he had arranged the straight forks and helped to season the salad. Wow, how you grew up, girl, he finally said Nina, as if he had noticed the presence of the granddaughter. What about school? Good grades? Obey mom? Yes, answered Dosha, his eyes shining. I even know how to make borscht. And wipe the floor, and dash yeah, it is, Ksenia Mikhailovna cut, without even looking at her. Better to learn to respect the elders first. Oleg, unbeaten on his pillow throne, only opened his mouth to comment on the weekend's fishing or complain about the boss. He didn't seem to realize or not to call to the tense mood, as if that were just another episode of a soap opera that didn't interest him. Remember, Alyosha, how did we go to Dacha as kids? Sighed Taisia, nostalgic. I was all so simple. United family, without this rush. Yeah, agreed the mother-in-law, shaking her head. Nowadays, even the granddaughter we see little. Work, work. Before, the family came first. Dosha listened to those words and did not understand. Why did adults complicate things so much? She just wanted everyone to laugh, that the grandma didn't look ugly to her mother, to leave that chair once in her life. When it was the turn of the hot plate, the girl has erected, he held the fork with elegance, chewing with his mouth closed, trying to prove it was already big. But when stretching her arm to get a piece of meat, her elbow bumped into Aunt Nina's glass. The liquid poured itself over the towel like a stain of guilt. For a second, he reigned such a dense silence that he could cut with the barbecue knife. Then hell released. Your daughter is an animal. Ksenia Mikhailovna roared, getting up so fast that the chair gritted. The previously pale face now burned in a furious red. What eats on the floor, like a dog? Before someone could react, she grabbed the meat plate and thrown it at the floor with a huge force. The porcelain shattered in 1,000 pieces, the food spread like splinters of a grenade, splashing walls and furniture. Dosha froze, his mouth open in the mute. Then the cry came, first in muffled sobs, then shouts that seemed to tear his chest. I didn't understand. Why did Grandma shout like this? Why did everyone look like she was a monster? Why had the world to turn upside down in 2 seconds? Anya remained paralyzed, the heavy body like lead. For a moment, he did not believe what he saw. Then, slowly, he turned to Oleg, waiting, praying that he said something, anything. But the man just chewed, indifferent. Air that had bought. That's right, Ksayusha, approved Nina, crossing her arms. Child has to be educated in the hard line, otherwise it becomes a wild. Of course, Taisia echoed. In our time, I got it much less. Dosha's cry now was a continuous lament, the little face buried on her mother's shoulder. Anya hugged her hard, her eyes fixed on her shards scattered across the floor, the impassive faces around, her husband who didn't even lift her eyes from the plate. Something inside her left, it was not anger, it was not pain. It was a cold, crystal clear clarity, like the first day of winter. Without a word, she got up, pulled her daughter by the hand and went to the door. Where do you think you are going? Shouted the mother-in-law, surprised. Will you leave this mess? But Anya already put on Dosha's shoes, the trembling fingers tying the shoelaces. There was nothing more to say. Some things don't need words, just a gesture. And that, she knew, would be the first of many. Anya put on Dosha's coat, then her own. The girl sobbed softly, not understanding what happened, but obeyed, sticking her arms into the sleeves with a docility that broke the heart. Anya, what are you doing? It was then that Oleg finally raised his eyes, his face still marked by the wrinkles of the pillow. Where are you going? She stared at him for a long moment, and in that look, years of disappointment, deaf pain, and, above all, a resolution that no longer admitted turns. Dashenka, dress, are going home, said softly to her daughter. But aren't we home? The child whispered, confused. No, dear. We were not. The front door knocked with a dry crack. Inside the apartment, the silence that followed was broken only by the mother-in-law's indignant murmurs, analyzing the daughter-in-law's unhealthy insolence. Meanwhile, on the building staircase, Dosha was squeezed against her mother, the hiccups stuffed in the tissue of the coat, not understanding why they had expelled them, even why Anya's eyes shone with tears she refused to drop. Chapter 3. The audience was scheduled for mid-November. Anya spent the week turning on the documents prepared by Nina Vladislavovna, rereading each clause as if it depended on her breath. Dosha would be with Lena. What child needed to hear the smudged details of a crumbling wedding? On the morning of the trial, she wore a severe blue talia and arrested her hair in a flawless bun. I wanted to convey seriousness. Responsibility. In the mirror, its reflection returned a pale but firm face. Everything will work, Lena said, squeezing her arm in her farewell. Just don't let them tease you. Answer calmly, as we rehearse. The forum building impressed her with her atmosphere of gravity. Endless corridors, muffled voices, looks that weighed as sentences. He found the room indicated and sat on a corridor bench, his hands squeezing the paste with the papers. Oleg arrived 10 minutes before the time, staggering, the crooked tie as a symbol of his own disorder. Seeing her, he nodded with a rigid gesture and sat on the other side of the corridor, as if they were already separated strangers by an invisible line. Anya, there is still time, he murmured, approaching. Let's try again. I spoke seriously to my mother. She got it. No, Oleg. It's already decided. She didn't raise her voice, but each syllable was a wall. But Dosha, she needs a father. You won't stop being. He opened his mouth to insist, but the court door opened, and the secretary called those involved. The judge was a middle-aged woman, with a look that seemed to dissolve lies even before they were said. He leaned the documents, asked protocol questions about the reasons for divorce, child custody, food. Defendant, do you agree with the terms of the action? Oleg hesitated, his eyes jumping between the magistrate and his ex-wife. I don't want to divorce. We can reconcile. There is Dosha, there is. But the Lord does not oppose divorce, correct? Cut the judge, already familiar with that script, a determined spouse, another who bumps apologizing until he gives in. No. If she insists. The issue of food has been resolved in 2 minutes. Official income of 30,000 rubles. Therefore, 25%, 7,500 monthly. Any objection? Can't it be less? Only if you prove income reduction. For now, we followed the statement. In less than half an hour, Anya left the forum with the divorce certificate in her hands, a strange mix of relief and empty chest. Oleg reached her on the way out. Anya, what now? How do I see Dosha? Combines on weekends. But only sober. I'm not an alcoholic, he muttered. They both knew it was a lie. Oleg nodded, the curved shoulders, and went to the bus stop with uncertain steps. For a moment Anya felt something close to pity, but the feeling evaporated before she could settle in. 4 days later, an incident would seal his certainty that he had not come back. Dosha studied in the afternoon and, after class, used to go to Lena's house, who had the key. But that day, as he left school, he found his father waiting by the gate. Dushenka. He called for a forced enthusiasm. Come, I take you home. Mom, you know? The girl suspected. Of course you know. We combined. Lie. Oleg simply decided that he had the right to take his daughter when he well understood. It smelled the beer, not much, just enough to give courage. Dosha hesitated. It was your father, after all. But the mother always said to warn if the plans changed. Dad, do we call Mom? For what? We arrived fast. She won't even realize that you left. The security guard of the school, Uncle Visha, watched the scene carefully. He knew Dosha, a quiet, polite child, who always greeted with a smile. Now, however, his eyes denounced fear. Dushenka, he approached, does your mother let you go with Dad? I don't know, answered the girl, sincere. He said yes, but we didn't match it. And who you are, her? Interrupted Oleg, aggressive. What business is this? It's my daughter. Is there any documents that prove? Asked the security guard, calm down. What document? She is my daughter, damn. A certificate of birth, for example. Or a written permission of the mother. Oleg paled. There was nothing. Meanwhile, Dosha already dials the mother's number on her cell phone. Mom, Dad is here and says you let me go with him. Is it true? Anya, at work, felt the blood freezing. No, love. I didn't let. Uncle Visha is there. Yes. Put the phone to him. The security guard listened to Anya's distressed instructions and nodded. Understanding. Don't worry. The child doesn't leave here. Listen here, you. Oleg tried to intimidate, but the voice failed. Don't disturb a father of seeing his daughter. I'll call the police. Call, said Uncle Visha, already dialing. They who solve. Oleg realized the size of the problem. Police meant bulletin, meant the company discovering, meant its dirty name. Ah, forget, he grunted, turning his back. Then we combine, right? And left, leaving Dosha trembling to security care. Anya arrived in 20 minutes, pale, her hands cold. He embraced his daughter tightly, thanked Uncle Visha, and that same night wrote a letter to school. No guardian could withdraw Dosha without her written permission. Mom, is Daddy bad? The girl asked before bed. No, my son. He didn't learn to be a father. Why didn't you learn? Anya had no answer. Sometimes people just don't learn. The next day, the phone rang. It was Ksenia Mikhailovna, the trembling voice of indignation. Anna, how do you dare to turn the school's safety against your daughter's father? This is absurd. Your son tried to take my daughter without my consent, drunk. Or you. Do you think this normal? Drunk. Oleg doesn't drink. He drinks every day, and you know it. I will file a request to restrict your visits. For defamation. Do that. But know that all conversations are recorded. A week later, the citizen arrived. Ksenia Mikhailovna required, by court, the right for maternal grandparents to have regular contact with their granddaughters, alternate weekends, joint holidays, active participation in education. Nina Vladislavovna analyzed the papers with an ironic smile. Interesting. The law actually guarantees to grandparents the right of coexistence, as long as it does not harm the well-being of the child. And what counts as well-being? Psychological comfort. Security, stability. And from what you told me, living with these people steals exactly that from your daughter. But the judge may oblige them to meet. It may determine visits, but it cannot force affection, especially when there are witnesses of the inadequate behavior of the authors of the action. The trial was a much more tense battle than Anya imagined. Ksenia Mikhailovna arrived in full force. The sisters, a neighbor-like eyewitness, even a distant cousin that no one knew. All spoke at the same time, painting a portrait of holiness. What a dedicated grandmother. Created the granddaughter from a baby, it fed, brought to the park, and now this rude daughter-in-law drives her away. Nina Arkaevna, with her sharp smile, watched the show. Anya heard it all and wondered, did they really believe in these lies, or have they used to repeat them without even realizing the absurdity? When it came to its turn, she reported the facts with a calm that surprised to the lawyer herself. He spoke of that night with the guests of his grandmother, the incident at school, the constant humiliations and the blackmail attempts. Do you have witnesses? The judge asked, leaning slightly forward. I have. School security guard is here to testify. A friend who housed us after that episode. And there are call recordings. Ksenia Mikhailovna's face was purple. This is defamation. Blood lies. I never dash. Ksenia Mikhailovna, cut the judge, with a voice that admitted no replica, you will have your turn to speak. Now, silence. Uncle Vitya's testimony, the security guard, was decisive. Man of military posture, with years of impeccable service, he described the scene with surgical accuracy. The individual was clearly drunk. The child cried, resisted. I intervened because it was my duty. Have you ever seen him at school? No, sir. Normally, it's the mother or Aunt Lena who seeks the girl. Then it was Lena's turn. She spoke of that night, from the shouts under the window, Anya's shock state and Dashka's desperate question. Why does Grandma scream like this? I did something wrong. It was visible the fear stamped on the child she described. Ksenia's family arguments collapsed like a card of letters. Very drama, very few facts. The verdict was clear: visits would be allowed, but only once a month, under Anya's supervision. No vacation together. No interference in education. Ksenia left the room tremendous with anger, spitting between teeth. This is not over. I will fight until the end. I will prove that I am right. But Anya no longer was shaken. For the first time in years, she felt the weight of the law by her side, and that was armor. Life gradually began to reorganize. Dashka adapted to the new routine, stopped asking his grandmother, via the father sporadically, meetings that looked more obligations than moments of affection. Oleg, visibly uncomfortable, did not know how to fill the silence between him and the 7-year-old daughter. And she, in turn, felt this distance as an emptiness. It was at the Child Development Center that everything changed. Anya enrolled Dashka in dance, drawing, and English classes, and it was there, among colorful corridors and laughs of children, that fate made a new chapter. Mikhail took his son, Artem, or just Theme, as everyone called him, for a robotics workshop. The 8-year-old was shy but had a keen intelligence. Just over a year ago, he had lost his mother, and stumbled in her absence. Dashka found him alone in the hall, with his eyes low and his hands quietly on his lap. "Why don't you play with other children?" she asked, directly how only children know to be. "I have no desire," he shrugged. "Why? Why not? I'm Dashka. And you?" "Artem. But everyone calls me the Theme. Where's your mother?" The shadow that went through the boy's face was so sudden that Dashka felt the air was heavy. She died. For her, mothers were eternal, like the sun or the sky. "How did you die? Where do you live, then?" "With my dad and my grandfather." "Are they cool?" "Yes. My father is cool. My grandfather too, only he is very sad." That was when a tall man with quiet glasses and a quiet posture approached. "Son, making friends?" He smiled. "Dad, this is Dashka," presented Theme. "Very pleased, Dashka. And where is your mother?" "She teaches dance here." "She's a teacher," replied the girl proudly. "I got it. Well, Theme, your class will start." The boy said goodbye with a nod, and Dashka stared at until he disappeared through the door. When the activities ended, they met in the same corridor. Theme spoke excited about robots and programming commands. Dashka rehearsed dance steps, laughing when he was wrong. The parents, while waiting, exchanged glances and then words. Mikhail was a programmer, worked remotely. The wife had died of cancer a year and a half earlier, and since then he raised his son with his father's help. "It must be difficult," said Anya, with genuine empathy. "Yeah. At first, it was hell. The Theme cried every night, looking for the mother around the house. Now it's better, but I feel like something. A feminine touch, you know? My father and I do what we can, but it's not the same thing." Anya watched that man, calm, a little melancholy, but with a sincerity that touched her. "And her father?" Mikhail asked, indicating Dashka with a discreet gesture. "Divorced. She sees him from time to time, but it's complicated." "I understand. Each one with their battles." Meanwhile, the children were already combining the next meeting. Theme promised to teach Dashka to program a simple robot, and she vowed to show him the basic steps of a ballet. "Dad, can Dashka come to our house?" asked the Theme on the way home. Mikhail hesitated for a second, not for reluctance, but by surprise to realize how naturally the idea seemed to him. If her mother leaves, of course. And, as the boy's thinking was mirrored, Dashka asked Anya at the same moment, "Mom, can we invite the Theme to dinner? His mother died, and he is sad." Anya stopped. After divorce, she had closed on a bubble, avoiding new connections, new judgments. But now, looking at her daughter, she understood, maybe that was exactly what was missing. "Of course you can, my love," he replied, smiling. "Let's combine it for next week." The first dinner took place at Mikhail's house. Anya arrived apprehensive, fearing that Dashka would feel intimidated, but the girl instantly adapted to the cozy apartment, fascinated by the Theme robots scattered around the room. Boris Petrovich, his grandfather, a tall man with silver hair and kind eyes, he received them with a heat that disarmed any tension. Retired doctor, now shared the time between helping his son with his grandson and his passion for joinery. Dashenka, do you like modeling? He asked, taking from the flour and ground beef. Model what? Pelmeni. Let's do together. The theme is already an expert, and you will learn. Mikhail covered the table with a transparent plastic, while Boris kneaded the dough with skilled hands. Can I help? Anya offered. No way. Laughs the old man. You are our guest, Anya. Sit, tell us. About you. And so, between laughs and scattered flour, the stories began to flow. Boris shared funny cases of his doctor's time. Mikhail spoke of the madness of the programming. Dashka, for the first time in months, heard male voices that did not carry threats or charges only. Voices that did not carry or irritation or aggression. It was as if, for the first time, the world breathed slowly around it. Grandpa, why was my Pelmen crooked? Asked Dashka frustrated, looking at his clumsy creation. Because you are in a hurry, Vnuchechka, Boris replied, with the patience of those who have kneaded thousands of pasta and thousands of lives. In the dough, as in life, what matters is not speed, it is care. But I'm not your Vnuchechka, the girl laughed, blushing. Who said? Boris Petrovich blinked, with a smile that made the wrinkles deepened in affection curves. Now I have 2 granddaughters. The theme is my grandson, so his friends are mine too. Something inside Dashka flourished at that moment. In her grandmother Ksenia's house, she had always been a hindrance, a weight tolerated. But there, between laughs and flour, she became yours. Belonging. Desired. After dinner, the children spread across the room with board games, while the adults stayed in the kitchen, among cups of tea and low confessions. Mikhail told Anya about her work programs for small businesses, flexible times, the conscious choice of prioritizing her child. After the saint passed away, her voice lowered, as if her wife's name was still a fragile talisman. I understood that the work feeds, but the family lives. I earn less, it's true, but the theme is not alone. I don't change that for nothing. And how did he deal with the loss? Anya felt the knot in her throat even before the answer. Difficult. The first 6 months, he barely spoke. I had to call a psychologist. Mikhail looked into his hands, as if his son's fault was written. He said it was his fault. Who had not loved her mother enough, who didn't help her. Child logic, do you understand? But how to explain to a child that death is not a punishment? Anya imagined the 7-year-old carrying that weight alone, and something left in her. The world was too cruel for the little ones. And now? He asked, his voice shaking. Better. Much better since your Dashka appeared. Mikhail discreetly pointed to the room, where the children laughed, vying for a round of data. See how he is. Before, it was a ghost. Now it shines. It was true. Theme was no longer that closed boy from the first visit. He gestured, laughed, challenged Dashka with looks of complicity. And Dashka. God, how happy she seemed. For the first time in months, he played with someone his age who did not humiliate her, did not push her to the corners. Mom, can we come back here? He asked on the way back, already sleepy on the bus, his head resting on Anya's shoulder. Grandpa Boris said I'm his granddaughter now. It's true, right? True, Solnishko, Anya whispered, kissing her hair. And as the city passed through the window, illuminated by trembling lights, she felt something that seemed lost for years, peace. No one shouted. No one called her useless. No one measured their choices with steel ruler. Just heat. The type of heat that warms the bones in winter. The visits became routine. One Saturday at their house, another in Anya. Boris Petrovich, who in a few weeks became Dashka's real grandpa, took the children to the zoo at Christmas, taught her to skate on the ice and always asked, with a glow in her eyes, Dashenka, shows how you dance. And she danced, spinning through the room as if the floor were a stage, while the old man clapped, proudly. Meanwhile, Ksenia Mikhailovna did not rest. He caught insistently, demanding to see the granddaughter. He wrote complaints to protective agencies, trying to find failures in Anya. P. Rovar that you are a bad mother, spats on the phone. But the commissions that appeared like that Saturday morning, when two women in serious suits inspected every corner of the apartment, only finding a smiling child, an attentive mother and a laughing home. "Who is this?" they asked, pointing to the theme designs in the refrigerator. "A Dashka friend," Anya explained, Serena. "They frequent the same development center." "And his parents? Do you visit your home often?" "Sometimes. We get along." They wrote down everything. Even Dashka's answer when they asked him if he was happy. "Mom cooks me, we go to the movies, and I have the Boris grandpa now. He makes pelmeni and tells stories. Grandma Ksenia threw my plate on the floor and said I was bad, but I am not. Grandpa Boris says I'm a princess." The inspectors exchanged a look. Children from troubled homes, they knew well. But Dashka, a well-groomed, articulated girl with eyes that shone when talking about life. There were no signs of negligence there. Only love. The verdict arrived in writing, proper conditions. No irregularity detected. Ksenia Mikhailovna exploded. He called cursing, threatening, "I have been all, but I won't give up. This child is mine." Ksenia Mikhailovna, Anya finally lost patience. "You had a chance not to hurt a 7-year-old child. And failed." "I won't fail. Asterisk. Hung up." There was no more space for poison. Until, on March night, after the children slept, Mikhail held Anya's hand and said, simple, "Anya, what if we get married?" She looked at him, her heart fired. It was not a question. It was a certainty. "Are you serious?" "Completely." Her fingers intertwined with hers. "We know each other well. The children are friends. My father loves you. Why wait? What if it goes wrong?" She thought of Oleg, screaming, broken promises. "I've had a bad wedding. You lost a wife. We know how cruel life can be." Just for that, he squeezed his hand. "We know nothing is guaranteed. But that doesn't mean we should be afraid of being happy." Anya didn't answer on time. He needed to digest the idea that after so long in the dark one was offering him a flashlight. Dashka, of course, was the first to approve. "Mommy." He jumped on her lap, her eyes starring. "Does that mean the theme will be my little brother? And will the Boris grandpa be totally my grandpa?" "Totally, Solnishko. Yura," he shouted, hugging her. "And can I take the rings at the ceremony?" He can. The wedding was small. Only the closest. Anya with simple white dress, dark suit Mikhail. Dashka, solemn, carrying the pillow with the rings. Proud, as the godfather of the father. Boris Petrovich could not hold back the tears. "Finally a complete family," he whispered, hugging the two grandchildren as if they were the treasure that always deserved. There were no pompous parties. Just a supper at home, with Lena and some colleagues from Mikhail. Common happiness, those who do not need spotlight to be real. Oleg sent a formal card, "Congratulations on the wedding." Ksenia Mikhailovna sent nothing. But a week later, he returned to the load, demanding visits. "Now that the girl has a new father, I need to check if it's safe," he shouted on the phone. "The protective organs have already seen. There are no complaints." Anya kept her voice firm. "They don't understand. I am the grandmother. I have rights. You had the right not to hurt my daughter." And lost him. The call ended there. Months later, Mikhail officially adopted Dashka. She gained a new surname and, with him, the certainty that no one could get her out of there. And when, a year later, Mashenka was born, the circle closed for good. Dashka, ecstatic with the role of older sister, helped bathe, sang lullays, showed toys with the authority of those who fin. He loudly belonged to something larger than herself. And theme? Well, the theme was the protective brother, the accomplice, the boy who, after so much silence, had rediscovered the voice and now used it to laugh. And Dashka, with her 7 years of children's wisdom, was important not essential. Like a small queen of a kingdom where the rules were dictated by the sun, the damp land between her fingers, and the smell of mint that the wind brought from her grandfather's garden. Boris Petrovich, rather a man of stuffed suits and endless meetings, had surrendered to the charm of being simply Dedushka. He led his grandchildren on weekends, teaching them to distinguish a carrot sprout from a weed, the spoonless spoon without crushing them, waiting patience, princesses, The earth has its time. And Dashka, who had never knew where tomatoes came from beyond the supermarket shelves, now dug the earth with her hands, marveling to see that the seeds she was buried her own back to life in the form of leaves, flowers, fruits. Dedushka, can I have my own grave? Asked, my eyes shining more than the June sun. Of course, my queen, he answered, already mentally tracing the space between the Atlas where the granddaughter would plant his redips and, perhaps, learned that some things are worth cultivated with love. The summers in Dacha were an endless movie, the bare feet on the still-moving grass, the races between the fruit trees, Buthenka crawling behind blue butterflies while Tima, now a navigation expert, commanded his remote control boat through the touched waters of the artificial lake. And Anya. Anya watched all of that safe place that only mothers know, where the heart throbs at the rhythm of their children's laughter and the past, as heavy, dissolves as sugar in hot tea. She had never dared to dream of it, a whole, complete family, smelling of homemade bread and sheets drying on the clothesline. Until a Sunday, like any other, fate decided to test his new tranquility. It was in the municipal park, near the lake where the ducks played crumbs with the children. Dashka paraded on her new scooter, Tima adjusted the boat's antennas, Mashenka slept in the shadow of the embroidered quilt that Anya had brought from home. Boris Petrovich, sitting on a nearby bank, debated Mikhail the best way to fix Dacha's roof until a hesitant movement caught his attention. A fragile silhouette, bent over time and something deeper, approached with steps that seemed to weigh tons. Ksenia Mikhailovna. The years had sculpted groove on his face, and the eyes, once sharp as blades, now wandered lost, as if they sought something they could find. Dashenka. The girl lifted her face, frowned. For a moment, there was only the noise of the scooter wheels against the cement and the Garsner far from the birds. Then, instinctively, she hid behind her grandfather's wide legs, like a bird that pressures the shadow of a predator. Didushka. Who is this aunt? He whispered, his fingers squeezing his shirt. I have no idea, Zaychik must have confused you with another child, lied Boris Petrovich, while adjusting the boat controls with a calm studied, but his eyes behind the sunglasses did not lose a detail. Ksenia Mikhailovna remained where she was, a longing statue in the moved park. He noted Dashka, now brunette as summer, her hair loose in the wind, laughing at something that Tima had just said. He noted Anya, Serena, beautiful in a way that was not just physical, but the beauty of those who finally found their place in the world. He watched the men helping the other to fold the blanket, the other raising Mashenka in his arms so that the little one can see the fish in the lake better. Dashenka repeated, a little higher, as if the volume could break the time barrier. Grandmother. Don't you remember me? I'm grandmother Ksenia. The girl shook her head, categorical. No. My grandmother is Grandma Tanya, who makes blinis with honey. And you are not her. Tima, curious, looked strange, but said nothing. He just squeezed his sister's hand, a gesture of childhood solidarity that was worth 1,000 words. It was then that Mashenka woke up, stretching on the quilt, and extended his arms to his mother. Anya took her on her lap without haste, her eyes finding Ksenia's for a second too long to be casual, too short to be an invitation. He nodded, that's all. A polished, empty nod of hatred, empty of joy, the kind of greeting that is made to a little neighbor who is barely known. Come on, kids, it's time to go home, said, the voice firm, but it doesn't last. Mashenka must be hungry. And the boat, protested Tima, reluctant to abandon his naval mission. He comes back alone, Malish, joked Boris Petrovich, already holding the remote control in his bag. Come on, you're captain. And so they departed, a procession of laughter and light steps, Dashka telling her brother on a bird that almost landed on her shoulder, Boris Petrovich carrying the folding chair and bag full of diapers and snacks, Mikhail pushing the cart while Anya adjusted Mashenka's hat against the sun. Ksenia Mikhailovna accompanied them with her eyes until she turned just another figure on the horizon, another shadow between the trees. So slowly, he returned to his bank. The pigeons, frightened by their sudden movement, flew off. The breadcrumbs were over. A light breeze wrote the surface of the lake, as if nature itself wanted to erase the tracks of that scene. The bus stop was just a few meters away. In less than 10 minutes, the vehicle arrived, and the lonely woman climbed the steps with the slowness of those who are not in a hurry. After all, no one was waiting for her at home. No voice would call her by name as she opened the door, no smell of hot food would receive her in the dark hallway. Meanwhile, in the spacious kitchen of a sunny apartment, Anya moved the soup pan, listening to the chorus of voices that now filled her life: Dashka's acute laughter, Tima's enthusiastic chatter, Mashenka's cheerful rod. "Mom, can I put the napkins on the table?" asked the eldest daughter, already tidying up the cutlery with the seriousness of a hostess. "Of course, Solnishko," Anya answered, smiling. "You do it so well." And it was true. Every detail, the fork in the right place, the spoon turned to the right side, was celebrated, while in another time, in another life, the same gestures would have been a score. Oleg, in turn, had become a footnote in family history. The checks arrived sporadically, the calls were increasingly rare, until at Christmas, a card with a shaking signature arrived, for Dashka from Dad. The girl kept the envelope in the shoe box where she collected unimportant things: stamps, repeated stickers, old school tickets. Not even opened. After all, she already had a father. One who taught her to ride a bike without wheels, who defended her from the monsters under the bed and, above all, would never allow no one, make her feel smaller than it was. Meanwhile, in a tiny apartment on the periphery, Ksenia Mikhailovna told the days between a clumsy connection of her son and another. The sisters still visited her, but the conversations always revolved around the same theme: today's youth has no gratitude, they sighed, while tea cooled on the cups. She nodded, but no longer had the strength to argue. After all, what was left to say? The photographs on the wall, a broken marriage, a grandson I had never really known, were just dusty memories of a script she had helped to write herself. And while the world followed by spinning there at the table set with love, Dashka served the soup for the family, not knowing that, somewhere, a woman looks. Go to the cracked ceiling and wondered how everything could have been different. But some questions, such as certain doors, should not be reopened. The past, after all, is just the place where we keep what no longer serves us. And the future? Well, the future smelled of fresh bread coming out of the oven.